ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats. We're about to begin. Please take your seats. And if you can't find your own seat, take somebody else's. That solves the problem, doesn't it? Well, welcome everybody. Welcome. Hello. How are you? You're alive, I can tell. Now, I know you've heard about me. I'm Tony Poulos. I'm going to be your host for the next couple of days. Now, I know you've all heard about the British Open, fantastic golf tournament, the American Open, the Australian Open. But you're here at Digitally Open. It's the very first Open of its type. You don't know how lucky you are to be here. But it's not the first event that Suntech has put on for their customers and their users and people around the world. I think this is the 8th event of its type. And you know, number 8 is a very lucky number for the Chinese. Last year, 7 is a very lucky year for Europeans. And next year, number 9 is very lucky for Indians. So I think we've got 3 years of fantastic business coming your way in Suntech. Those 3 auspicious numbers to look forward to. And just to get you in the right frame of mind, the whole event here is all about collaborative experience, or being collaborative, collaboration, experience and value. And if you don't know why those 3 things are so closely intermeshed, you will by the end of the conference, I can assure you. We've got some great speakers lined up for you and some very, very interesting messages, product demonstrations. The whole lot will keep you occupied for the next couple of days. But before we start off, we're going to go through the ceremonial lighting of the lamp. And of course, this is very important for the event. It sets the tone for the event, and it's the light that lightens up the darkness. So I'd like to invite our very special guests up here, one after another, to help with the lighting of the lamp event. Firstly, NK, the CEO of Suntech Business Systems. I hope you all know him. Welcome. Our plenary session speaker, who you'll be hearing from very shortly, is Chris Skinner. He's an author and commentator. You'll hear more about him shortly. Chris, welcome. Come up here. And of course, our old favourite, G. Vijay Raghavan. I can never say his name, so I always go back to GVR. Where are you, GVR? I know everybody calls you GVR. Thank you. He's a director. Suresh Rao, who is the CFO of Suntech, probably the most important, or second most important person in the company. Where are you, Suresh? Come up here. Everyone goes quiet when you mention CFO. Did you notice that? No applause. It was belated. That's the guy that pays your salary, okay? It's very important. Do you remember that one? And Amit Dua, who is the president and head of customer-facing group at Suntech. Amit, come up here. And last but not least, certainly not, is Satish Chandran, better known as Sats, who is the president of global head of delivery at Suntech. Eh? Oh, is it? It's a different one. Oh, sorry, Sats, I apologise. Come on up. Satish Chandran. Okay, my apologies. Okay. I'm glad I'm not lighting the light. Good to see you. Thank you, gentlemen. Well done. I'm glad you're wearing good socks today. Yeah. Very handy. Thank you very much. We're going to watch a very short video and then I'll introduce you to our opening welcome address.
Our planet functions as an open ecosystem where elements interact with each other to create value. Look at the oceans. The water rises to rain on the lands. Rivers flow, creating opportunities for life wherever they go. Bees and other insects work as pollinators and help plants reproduce. The sun refuses to filter its power and is open for anyone to harness. From the microbes in our body to the microbes in the soil, the smallest of beings collaborate to create. There are no boundaries to nature as it is open for all. Every element in the ecosystem comes together effortlessly to create magnificent experiences and derive great value. What can the world of business and technology learn from our planet's ecosystem? Imagine if businesses across the world collaborate similarly to deliver experiences as rich as nature. We would then be creating a powerful, collaborative, integrated, and open ecosystem. Digital transformation is the ideal platform to make this happen. AI, machine learning, big data analytics, Internet of Things, and APIs can help businesses today to collaborate seamlessly and create experiences like never before. New dimensions that were left unexplored now open up. Businesses are no longer restricted to particular domains. They can now venture into end-to-end experiences of the customer. From understanding the need for products or services to delivering them on time, businesses can now be a fulfilling part of every experience in an individual's life. Suddenly, a number of direct and indirect revenue streams open up for companies to explore, as the exclusivity to information and barriers to customer ownership are shattered. Much like the forces of nature that collaborate to create rich experiences of unmatched beauty, perfection and value, several businesses today have already started their journey to becoming digitally open and have disrupted many industries. It's time to catch up with expectations of customers and move beyond them. Let us learn from nature to collaborate effortlessly, create magical experiences and generate incredible value, and build a digitally open world.
Oh, yes. Oh, that sets the scene, doesn't it? Gets the blood flowing. Well, it's got my blood flowing anyway. And at my age, that's a good thing. Let's have a welcome address from Amit Dua, who is the President and Head of Client Facing Group right here at Suntech. Amit, well.
Thanks a lot. Tony, I don't blame you in mixing up Satish with Sats. After I joined here 20 months back, I realized there are maybe 30 odd Satish here. Okay. Are we doing okay with the sound?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon and a very, very warm welcome to all of you. Welcome to the nice and warm Kerala, and especially our guests from Europe and US will really be appreciating the weather. I just escaped it by 10 days when I came here from London and kind of escaped the entire bad weather phase that we went through. As it is known as a God's own country, this Kerala, with the beautiful beaches, the backwaters, the sunshine of course, and I don't know how many of you know the Ayurveda, right? And thank you indeed for taking out the time out of your busy schedules and reposing trust in us for all these years. Now, confluence, as the term term suggests, it's the meeting of the minds and the ideas, but it's also, as we've seen over the years, forming very, very deep relationships with our peers in the industry. And to me, last but not the least, some very, very deep personal connects that you end up forming with your colleagues and peers in the industry. So try and do that for the next 3 days. Last year, for those of you who were here, you would have seen that we had a strength of 55 delegates from 32 global organizations across 10 countries coming in last year. And this is the first year, you would probably know, some of you who've been with us for years, that we moved it from being once in 2 years event to an annual event, which we decided to host this year right after last year. And the good news is that this is bigger and better this time, hopefully. And we have 68 delegates coming in from 39 organizations globally across 12 countries who are participating here. Now, I'll just take this opportunity to do a very, very quick business update, literally 3 minutes, I guess. We've had an unprecedented 24 new organizations joining the Suntec community. When I say 24 new organizations, across industries, organizations like yours who've joined the Suntec fraternity, so thank you so much for that in just last 1 year. As a result, we have increased our client base by a solid 65% to now over 70 clients worldwide. So by every standard, last year has been exceptional for us. Clients like American Express globally, the global travel business of American Express in the US for its global billing need in over 70 countries. We've sort of partnered with them for that. The Siam Commercial Bank in Thailand, which some of you know is amongst the largest banks in Thailand. Right here in India, the big banks like HDFC Bank, the IndusInd Bank, the RBL, the formerly Ratnakar Bank, some of the new small finance banks and payment banks which got set up in the country because of the digital revolution and the inclusivity that is being sort of encouraged by the government. So AU Finance Bank, they joined us as well. But also a very, very strong contingent joining from the GCC countries actually. So we had up until now just one GCC client, a very large bank by the name of Mashrek there. But in this very year, we have had 13 new additions to our Middle East customer base. And you know, we've had the big names like the First Abu Dhabi Bank, which is the largest in Middle East, the Al Raji Bank, the National Commercial Bank of Saudi, the two biggest in Saudi, the Al Hilal Bank, which has been ranked by many, many industry observers as one of the most innovative banks in the Middle East. All of these guys have joined the Suntec customer community. The other exciting thing that happened this year from our ability to service the market point of view is our relationship with Microsoft for the Azure offering. We all know that most businesses are moving to cloud, and NK in his speech will touch upon that later. So we've had partnership done with Azure today. Accelerate is Microsoft Azure certified for those of you who are looking at that as an option. But very, very interestingly, the launch of Open Banking platform. Now, I know there are people from all over the world here and Europeans who know that Open Banking in UK, for instance, is a regulatory mandate. But in EU, the whole PSD2 triggered off opening of APIs from the 13th January this year. And that's the region where the regulation is actually driving the change. But in countries like Singapore, in US, in India, right here, there are countries where even without a regulatory mandate, banks realize that collaboration, not just within the industry, but outside the industry is the way to go. So we actually launched our Open Banking platform, which I'm sure Sats, our head of product management, will talk about it during the course of the proceedings. And also the Open Food platform. Very interesting offering. Anybody wants to have a conversation around it by the side, more than happy to do that. Any of us at Suntec. That was launched in Dubai recently. Now this time around, in addition, in last 1 year, we have also added to our growing partner community, partners who help us scale up, because if we sort of start onboarding the number of organizations at this rate, naturally we'll need help from partners who are going to scale up for us and help us execute all of this. So we've had likes of ITC Infotech, a few of those people are here. In fact, their CEO is joining in tomorrow. Capgemini, the global SI, who's joined our partner community as well. Tech Mahindra, the other large Indian IT services company who's joined our community. And Cognizant. See, these are amongst the few global partners who've joined us, and also a few local partners in specific countries, and some of them are around here. Now, talking about the theme itself, last year, the theme, if some of you recall, was the fourth industrial revolution. And we had an absolutely eminent speaker in the name of Professor Ram Charan of the Execution book fame and many other books. He's written 17 books. And he enlightened us with his thoughts on the best strategies for the companies who are going through transformation journeys. Right? So it was all about the fourth industrial revolution. So just a quick show of hands, how many of us in the room are aware that Amazon has the biggest banks in US potentially to start offering checking account? How many of us are aware? Wow, so it's a good 15–20% audience who knows about it. So we know that the big guys, the GAFAs, are coming. I remember last time we had a theme around it, and Abhay Jori, who's a speaker here, he sort of came up with that tagline as well. So yes, indeed, that's happening now. And my take on that is that they could amass, some of the reports say that they could amass 70 million clients in next 5 years. And even if they don't sell more goods, the shopping and the delivery to them, they still would have saved millions of dollars in the credit card payment alone, right? So the other industries are coming into these services. Now, as a result, the 2018 promises to be an exciting year as disruptions like marketplaces, likes of Amazon, Google, Facebook, the Ant Financial Services, etc. from China, and open ecosystem, including open banking, impact the global, both or actually all of the banking industry, the telecom industry, as well as the retail industry. And organizations will naturally need to start being digitally open. And when I say digitally open, to borrow from Chris, it's not about having some channels, but having digital in your very fabric. As they collaborate to derive value for the customer through the open platforms and deliver an end-to-end customer experience. So it's all about customer ownership and customer experience. As a natural progression, this year's theme, as all of you know by now, is being digitally open. The theme is for years is that he has blogged every single day for last 11 years, every single day. And I certainly, for myself, don't seem to think that's enough, because I need more. But it's not all hard work, guys and ladies. We've also planned for you to experience the diversity of India, enjoy and network as our guest at the cocktail dinner tonight. Now, I'm told by the event organizers that there's a threat of rain looming. Let's see how does it go, even for tomorrow. So we have a task at our hand. A Royal India themed gala dinner tomorrow, and Sadhya, for those of you who are staying back for Wednesday lunch, please experience it. It's a local cuisine, an eclectic mix, all served on a banana leaf. I love that. There is a program running in parallel for the spouses, so for whom we've arranged the shopping, the local sightseeing, the food, and whatnot. We really hope to make your stay as comfortable and as indulging as possible. Enjoy this beautiful evening. And once again, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Throughout this conference, I request you to stay engaged and help us shape the future with you. And I look forward to strengthening the partnership with you, and truly wish that each of you take back some great memories out of Confluence 2018. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you. Well, Well, Amit, I've never heard anybody drop so many names in a presentation before, so many big names. All those new customers of yours, and then to top it off, you introduced Chris Skinner. That's actually my job. Now, I was going to introduce Chris, and I've got nothing left to say about him, except a few things that I picked up. You know, I was checking up on his profile. I've known Chris, or known of Chris, for many years now, and I read his interminable blogs. They just keep coming out one after another. But I have to say that on LinkedIn, it says that he's an author, speaker, and a troublemaker. So immediately we have a lot in common, Chris, which makes me very happy. He's an expert in banking technology and writes the daily blog, as we just heard. And his blog is called The Financer. One word, The Financer with an S. Financer, thefinancer.com. You should get on there and subscribe because it'll keep you up to date on what's going on in that world. He also consults about the future, and I'm going to ask him a bit later on if he can give me a bit of consultation on my future, which doesn't look real good sometimes. And he has written, last time I looked, he'd written 14 books, but this morning I checked, and now there's 15 books. So he wrote another one while I was reading LinkedIn. So, Chris, I don't know how you pump those books out, but I'm glad we're getting one of them. So without further ado, let me introduce the plenary session speaker who's going to talk to us about digital is a far more fundamental change than business as usual. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Skinner.
Wow. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, NK and Amit, and Gujarat and the Suntech team for inviting me here to lovely Kerala. First time here, and I must admit it's very beautiful. I've been here for more than a day because I unfortunately have to fly out straight after this presentation to go to Money 2020 in Singapore. And normally I'm quite pale, but as you can tell, I didn't understand the Indian weather, so I'm a little bit rednecked today. I think you guys have said enough about what I get up to. And what I'm going to do is summarize the messages of the last 3 books, which are siblings in my view, in the next 40 minutes. And Digital Bank came out in 2014, and it's still selling and doing rather well because some people have only just heard of it. It's been translated into 12 languages, and particularly it's popular across most of Asia, but it has now just got a Hindi version that's been released. So I'm hoping that there will then be another Hindi version of ValueWeb. Digital Bank was all about the challenges we have of dealing with industrial-era financial institutions that manage the physical distribution of paper in a localized network of buildings and humans, and transform that, completely transform it, into an organization that's focused on the digital distribution of data through software and servers. And there's still quite a few people who resist what I'm saying, but the core of what I'm saying is being digitally open. It's having digital at the core of the institution, and the buildings and humans provide access and service through that digital structure, rather than adding digital to old structures. ValueWeb focused on distributed ledger technology, blockchain, and the mobile network, and the other technologies that go around that, and how they're creating a fast and free network. And I'm the only guy, I think, in the room that I've spotted so far wearing a tie. But the reason for my tie is the new book, Digital Human. And I don't have time to talk through the whole things in Digital Human in that it's 400 pages, but I'm going to give you some of the key headlines. And in particular, what I won't do is give you some of the core background message about why digital is transformational, except to say that for the first time ever on planet Earth, 7.5 billion people can access each other immediately in real time if they want to. Everybody can get access to a phone. And through a mobile phone, they can get access to a network. I was recently in Rwanda, and there's a company called Craft Silicon from Nairobi, Kenya, who can now use USSD GSM networking, which is basic text messaging, and can identify the location of where the text message is. So even old networks are getting renovated into new capabilities. And this enables everybody to become an entrepreneur. And I want to touch on some of those themes. Okay. They gave me the duff one.
Say something now, Chris.
Is that better?
Much better.
Even I can hear myself now. Suffice to say, we're still going to get some things on the line. I think if I step further back on stage, no. Okay, it's maybe just a little bit too high. If you have trouble hearing me, just start waving and I'll move to the lectern. There's no problem. Okay. So this is a radical transformation of planet Earth. And what the book tracks is the history of how humans have revolutionized trade and commerce through the last 7 million years, but in particular the last 100,000 years, and points out that this is the first time ever that all of humanity can be connected. And I do literally mean all of humanity can be connected. So I'll touch on some of those themes from the book, but the main theme I'm going to touch on is open banking. So with digital, we've got a situation today where right now about 60 terabytes of data per second is being uploaded to the global network. Probably some of you in this room through Twitter or Facebook are doing that right now. And to put that in context, I used to work for NCR, which is a company that does cash machines, but at the time I worked with NCR in the 1990s, they had a group called Teradata. And Teradata dealt with massive machines to analyze thousands of megabytes of data, which at the time was thought of as radical. And yet now I carry a 2 terabyte external hard drive in my bag. So data storage, access, bandwidth is all collapsing into fast and free and cheap. And that's the reason why digital companies are transforming planet Earth, because the industrial era companies used to deal with an awful lot of manufacturing, integrating, delivering, distributing, and servicing things, and yet now the biggest companies in the world don't make anything. And they don't really distribute anything, they just connect through their platforms, people who have something with people who need something. I have questions, I need answers, Google. I have friends, I need to share my life with them, Facebook. I have a journey I need to take, and someone has a car, Olo, or Lyft, or Uber. So the biggest companies in the world are now digital companies that, in a lot of cases, don't make anything, just connect everyone through their global platforms. In the clear change between the industrial era and the digital era is when you are a platform company, you can create as much, if not more, market value through 1/100th of the people, because you don't need the people. What you need is the platform, the software, the servers, and the algorithms. And that is the massive change. And it's the reason why we talk about Facebook being the biggest media company that creates no content, or Instagram being the new Kodak with only 13 employees. In financial services, it's taken time, but it's now finally happening, where we're seeing the digital fintech world transforming the financial world. And we're seeing startup companies that do one thing brilliantly well, taking over from big industrial era companies that do 1,000 things averagely. And this is where I'm going to focus the presentation, because this is where I see the biggest change. When a startup that's only 6 years old, when it was valued at $9.2 billion, can create 22 times more value per employee than the oldest, or one of the oldest banks and biggest valued banks of the world, JP Morgan Chase. 22 times more value per employee. And to me, it's banking as a service, which is the open sourcing structure of financial services, which I've been blogging about for 10 years, or presenting about for 10 years. So banking as a service I coined in February 2009 as a phrase, and now everyone talks about it. But banking as a service, it was just a simple idea of saying, if there's 1,000 startup companies out there doing one thing brilliantly well, then through an API, I can take what they're doing and plug and play that into my network and onto my desktop or into my mobile device, and I can build and create my own bank that reflects the bank of Chris Skinner. I could potentially launch the bank of Chris Skinner to consumers through 1,000 APIs that I curate and aggregate from 1,000 specialist companies that do one thing brilliantly well. And this is where I think the digitally open fundamental shift is being misunderstood by a lot of institutions, because most of the banks I talk to, when they talk about open sourcing, open banking, open APIs, talk about doing banking as it's always been, faster and cheaper with technology. To me, it's taking technology to build a faster horse, in this case, to build a faster bank. And it's wrong, as I'll show you, but it also is wrong primarily because it's not focusing on the fundamental change to the bank's business model. So what is the bank's business model? Well, at the back end, in the back office, we have the products and innovations and service and administration. In the middle office, we have the infrastructure to transact and trade between the front and the back office. And in the front office, we're meant to have people who are really good with people, the retail customer experience. And this structure I've used for a long time to analyze banks' operations, because it's actually 3 separate businesses: manufacturing, processing, retailing. And as we move towards universal banking, where most banks try to provide the complete totality of all financial service to their clients, we ended up with big universal Goliath banks that did 1,000 things averagely, and in fact several hundred things terribly, now being attacked by specialists doing one thing brilliantly well. This business model is in fact based on an old way in which I used to look at companies using re-engineering, where it's product, process, and people. And my contention was that you start with the front office experience of the people and build the vision of the institution back from that customer-centric view. Unfortunately, because the banks that I've dealt with for most of my life started with systems built around products, they don't start with the customer view, they start with the product view. How do we push products through channels to get share of wallet? Rather than thinking about what is the customer journey and aspiration and how do we fulfill it? And this is where the big shift is coming, because now we don't deal with processes and people, we deal with platforms and devices. And this is where the biggest shift is happening, because in an open source structure, the specialist startups that do one thing brilliantly well start with the customer-centric experience. What's the user experience going to look like? How will it feel? How do we design a digital experience that feels really human and easy and takes friction away? And then plug that into a platform of APIs that can connect with anything else needed to make that experience the best it can be. So when you look at a taxi riding service like Uber or Olo, what you realize is that they're just using Google Maps APIs and a bunch of payments APIs and a bunch of other APIs to provide an easy connection between a car and a journey. The same with Airbnb, the same with Facebook, the same with most services these days. The first time I heard about one of these ideas in financial services was on March the 30th, 2005, 13 years ago. That was the first time I heard about fintech. And it was a company presenting the idea that when you have people who need something, like they need to buy a car, they would connect them through a platform to people who had money. And their platform would manage through an algorithm the risk of the person who needs the money to buy the car repaying the money to the people who have the investments. They called the system Zopa, a peer-to-peer lender. In the UK, they've now grown to be one of the largest personal credit providers in the personal financial markets, with 4% market share, doubling year on year. It's taken them 13 years, but doubling year on year means that from a peanut, they've grown into an acorn, and they're growing into a massive tree, potentially taking over 8% of the market this year, 16% next year. And we're talking billions of dollars. I mean, this is not trivial. They've been enabling loans between people who have money and people who need money to the tune across them and their peers of around $5 billion today. So it's getting bigger and bigger. So that's just a simple contextual view around what fintech and startups and platforms are all about, and specializing in one thing really well, enabling people who have money to invest in people who need money and know they'll get the money back. I think of it as the apps, APIs, and analytics revolution. The front office is becoming apps, the middle office is APIs, the back office is all about the analytics. And when I look at that, I can illustrate it really well with, for example, what began as mobile software, a bit of scrappy paper, and then sending a check in the post, I tell you what, why don't we develop an app on PayPal, because we both use PayPal, to do social payments as we go along. And that's what they developed. And they sold it to Braintree in 2012 for $26.2 million.